The rain hammered against the windows of the old Victorian house in suburban Chicago like it was trying to drown out the ghosts inside. Brian hesitated in the doorway of his stepfather's bedroom. The silk nightgown, his mother's favorite, the one she'd worn on lazy Sunday mornings, clinging to his skin like a second layer of regret. "Elena!" Bruce's voice cracked from the darkness, thick with bourbon and grief, reaching out blindly into the night. Brian swallowed the lump in his throat, his heart slamming against his ribs like a trapped bird. He was 22, lean from years of track meets and late-night shifts at the coffee shop, but tonight he felt as fragile as the lace trim brushing his thighs. Stepping forward, the floorboards creaked under his bare feet, and he whispered, "I'm here, love." His voice pitched just high enough to mimic the lilt his mother had carried from her Mexican roots, soft, teasing, alive. Bruce's hand found his in the shadows, rough calluses from years of fixing engines at the garage scraping against Brian's palm. "God, I miss you," Bruce murmured, pulling him down onto the bed without opening his eyes, the weight of his body shifting like an anchor in the storm. Brian froze, then melted, because in that moment, the lie felt like the only truth left in the house. It had been 3 months since the accident. A slick highway in the dead of winter, Elena's car spinning out on black ice, gone in a flash of twisted metal and paramedic lights. Brian had come home from college in Boston for Christmas break and never left, the dorm room too empty, the city too loud without her laugh echoing in his ears. Bruce, his stepdad of 10 years, had unraveled like a frayed rope. The man who'd once barbecued ribs in the backyard with a grin wide enough to light up block parties now wandered the house like a shadow, bottles emptying faster than the snow melted off the roof. Brian watched it all from the kitchen table, nursing black coffee at dawn while Bruce snored on the couch downstairs. They were family by marriage. Not blood. Bruce had married Elena when Brian was 12, fresh off a messy divorce that left him with a beat-up Ford and a heart full of apologies. "You're the son I never had, kid," Bruce would say, clapping him on the back after teaching him to change a tire or throw a spiral. But lately, those words hung heavy, laced with a desperation Brian couldn't ignore. The idea had come to him one sleepless night, scrolling through old photos on his phone. Elena in that nightgown, arms wrapped around Bruce on their anniversary trip to the Smoky Mountains. Bruce had been calling out for her in his dreams, thrashing against sheets soaked in sweat, waking up hollow-eyed and hollow-hearted. Brian knew the grief. It clawed at him too, but he was young, resilient, with friends who dragged him to dive bars and therapy apps that promised closure. Bruce? He was 45, built like a linebacker gone soft around the middle, with a face etched by laugh lines now twisted into permanent furrows. He needed more than pills or platitudes. So Brian waited until the house was still, the clock ticking past midnight, and slipped into her closet. The gown smelled like lavender and vanilla, Elena's signature, the one that used to waft through the house on hug days. He tied his hair back in a loose ponytail, dabbed on a touch of her lipstick from the vanity, and padded down the hall. It wasn't about desire, he told himself, not at first. It was mercy, a bandage for the wound that wouldn't heal. But as Bruce's arm draped over his waist, pulling him close in the king-sized bed that suddenly felt too vast and too intimate, Brian's breath hitched. Bruce's chest rose and fell against his back, steady and warm, the faint scent of aftershave cutting through the booze. "Tell me about the baby," Bruce slurred, his lips brushing Brian's neck, mistaking the curve of his shoulder for the one he knew so well. Brian faltered, then improvised. Our boy's all grown up now, he said softly, channeling Elena's warmth. He's got your eyes. Mi amor. Those blue ones that see right through me. It was a half-truth. Brian's eyes were hazel, a mix of Elena's fire and his absent father's shadow. But Bruce sighed, content, his hand tracing lazy circles on Brian's hip. They lay like that for hours, the rain a relentless symphony outside. Brian didn't sleep, couldn't, with the press of Bruce's body reminding him how thin the line was between comfort and something sharper, something forbidden. Dawn crept in through the curtains, gray and unforgiving, and Brian slipped away before Bruce stirred, folding the gown back into the drawer like a secret letter. The next night, Bruce drank less, but the calls came anyway. "Elena, that you?" From the foot of the stairs. Brian went again, heart racing faster this time, the silk a familiar traitor against his skin. They talked, whispers about the life they'd built, the house in Pilsen they'd bought for a steal, the way Elena's tamales had won over the whole neighborhood at block parties. Brian wove in details from her stories, her dreams of opening a bakery, her secret love for cheesy rom-coms. Bruce laughed, a sound Brian hadn't heard since the funeral, low and rumbling like thunder rolling out. "You're my anchor," Bruce said one night, his fingers interlacing with Brian's under the covers. "Without you, I'd drift away." Brian bit his lip to keep from confessing, from pulling back. Instead, he pressed closer, letting the lie bloom in the dark. Days blurred into weeks. By day, they were stepfather and stepson. Brian dragging Bruce to AA meetings in the basement of St. Mary's. Bruce fixing Brian's busted bike chain with grease-stained hands and gruff advice. "Life's like this chain, kid. Gotta keep the links tight or it all falls apart." Evenings, Brian studied for his online psych classes, the glow of his laptop casting shadows on Elena's empty side of the closet. Nights belonged to the pretense, a ritual that stitched them back together, thread by fragile thread. But cracks formed. Bruce started lingering in the mornings, his hand brushing Brian's arm as he poured coffee, eyes searching his face with a flicker of confusion. "You remind me of her sometimes," he'd say, voice rough, and Brian would nod, throat tight, wondering how long until the illusion shattered. One Tuesday, after a shift at the garage where a transmission fight left Bruce bruised and brooding, he came home early. Brian was in the kitchen, chopping onions for pozole, Elena's recipe, the one that always coaxed Bruce's smile. The door slammed, and there was Bruce, oil-streaked and weary, dropping his keys on the counter. "Rough day," he muttered, but his eyes lit on Brian with that new intensity. Brian turned, knife pausing mid-slice. "Sit. I'll make it better." The words slipped out Elena sweet, and Bruce's brow furrowed. "You already do." He stepped closer, close enough that Brian could smell the motor oil and sweat, and for a heartbeat, the air thickened. Bruce's hand cupped his cheek, thumb tracing the line of his jaw, gentle, searching. "God, Brian, you're good to me." Brian's pulse thundered. He leaned into it, just a fraction, the knife forgotten on the board. "Always," he whispered, and Bruce pulled him into a hug, fierce and unyielding, chin resting on Brian's head like he had when Brian was a kid scared of thunderstorms. That night, the pretense shifted. Bruce didn't drink at all, sober enough to notice the slight hitch in Brian's voice, the way his stubble rasped against the pillow. But he didn't question it, just held him tighter, murmuring endearments into the crook of his neck. I love you, Bruce said, and Brian echoed it back, the words tasting like truth wrapped in sin. By the end of the month, the house felt alive again. Music from the old stereo, Bruce whistling while he mowed the lawn, Brian catching himself smiling in the mirror. But guilt gnawed at him, a quiet beast in his chest. He journaled it out in fits and starts. What am I doing? This isn't me. This is her. But what if? He trailed off, pencil snapping under his grip. The breaking point came on a humid July evening, the kind where the air hung heavy with cicadas and unspoken things. Bruce had a date, his first since Elena, set up by a coworker at the garage. A widow from the neighborhood, nice enough, with a laugh like wind chimes. Brian watched him dress in the mirror, buttoning a crisp blue shirt that hugged his broad shoulders, splashing on cologne that wasn't his usual drugstore stuff. You look good, Brian said from the doorway, arms crossed to hide the tremor in his hands. Bruce turned, grinning that old cocky grin. Yeah, think she'll notice. He winked, but his eyes held a shadow doubt, maybe fear. Brian's stomach twisted. She'd be blind not to. The irony burned, but he forced a smile. As Bruce left, keys jingling, the house echoed with emptiness. Brian paced the kitchen, the pozole simmering forgotten on the stove. Upstairs, he pulled on the gown, the silk cool against his fevered skin. But tonight, he didn't go to Bruce's room. He sat on the edge of his own bed, staring at the family portrait on the wall. Elena radiant, Bruce proud, Brian awkward at 13 with braces and a bowl cut. The door clicked open hours later, past midnight, the date cut short. Footsteps heavy on the stairs, a curse under breath. Brian waited, breath shallow, until Bruce appeared in the doorway, tie loosened, eyes red-rimmed. Kid, you up? Bruce's voice was wrecked, like gravel in a tumbler. Brian stood, the gown whispering against his legs. Yeah. Bad night. Bruce leaned against the frame, rubbing his face. She was great. Nice. But it wasn't right. Felt like cheating on a ghost. He looked up then, really looked, and his gaze snagged on the nightgown, the ponytail, the lipstick smudged from nervous biting. Time stretched, taut as a wire. Brian. What the hell? Brian's world tilted, the room spinning slow like a bad carnival ride. Bruce's eyes, those blue ones that saw too much, widened, flicking from the gown to Brian's face, piecing it together in the harsh glow of the bedside lamp. You've been. Jesus Christ. All those nights, it was you. The words landed like punches, each one stealing Brian's air. He clutched the hem of the nightgown, knuckles white, searching for the lie that had saved them before. But the script was blank now, the darkness that hid him stripped away. I just wanted to help, he stammered, voice cracking on the edge of tears. You were breaking, Bruce. Calling for her, night after night. I couldn't watch you drown. Bruce staggered back a step, hand raking through his hair, leaving it spiked like a crown of thorns. Help? By pretending to be my dead wife, sneaking into my bed like some kinda ghost. His voice rose, raw and ragged, echoing off the walls lined with Elena's watercolors. Vibrant markets from her Guadalajara childhood, now mocking them both. Brian flinched, the silk suddenly abrasive, a costume too small for the truth spilling out. It started that way, but then it changed. You laughed again. You touched me like I mattered. Not as her, as me. He stepped forward, desperate, arms outstretched. Bruce, please. Don't hate me. Hate. The word hung there, poisonous, and Bruce's face crumpled, shoulders slumping under the weight of it all. He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing Brian's arms. Not rough, but firm, like holding onto a lifeline. Hate you? Kid Brian, I could never. But this is fucked up. Twisted. I'm your dad. For Christ's sake. Step or not, that's what I am. The word dad sliced deeper than accusation, twisting the knot in Brian's gut. He wrenched free, backing toward the window where the cicadas droned on, oblivious. You're not my dad. My real one bailed when I was 6, left mom with a stack of bills and a toddler who didn't understand why the tree stayed up past New Year's. You showed up with bad jokes and better hugs. You made us a family. Tears burned hot tracks down his cheeks, smearing the lipstick into clownish streaks. And yeah, maybe it's twisted, but it felt real. You felt real. Bruce sank onto the bed, head in hands, elbows on knees like a man at confession. The room smelled of rain-soaked earth and regret, the gown's lavender clashing with the faint ozone of a storm brewing outside. Minutes stretched, broken only by Brian's ragged breaths and the distant rumble of thunder. Finally, Bruce looked up, eyes shadowed but clear. Tell me everything. From the beginning. So Brian did, perching on the desk chair like a witness on the stand, the words tumbling out in a rush. The first night, heart pounding as he mimicked her voice. The way Bruce's stories unlocked pieces of Elena he'd never known. The wild girl who'd backpacked Europe on a whim. The one who'd cried at Bruce's proposal under the bean in Millennium Park. How the touches lingered. Innocent at first, then electric. How Brian's dreams shifted from grief to longing, waking hard and ashamed under the sheets. Bruce listened, face a mask of storm clouds, nodding at the details that rang true, the lilt in the voice, the scent of the gown. When Brian finished, voice hoarse, the silence was a chasm. I thought it would fix you, Brian whispered. But it fixed me too. Made me see how much I need you. Not as dad. More. The confession hung there, bold and broken, and Bruce surged to his feet, pacing the room like a caged bear. More? Brian, you're 22. Gay as hell. I knew that since you came out at 16, waving that pride flag like it was the Bears Super Bowl banner. I supported you, drove you to those marches downtown. But this, crossing that line, it's betrayal. Of Elena. Of us. Betrayal. The word echoed Brian's deepest fear, the one that had kept him silent through weeks of stolen nights. He stood, fists clenched. Then why didn't you stop it? You felt it, the difference. My stubble, my voice slipping. You held me anyway. Pulled me closer. Was that betrayal too? Bruce halted, breath hitching, and for the first time, Brian saw the crack in the armor vulnerability, raw as an open wound. I don't know. Nights like that, in the dark, it was like she was back. Comfort. But then mornings, seeing you strong, kind. The kid who fixed my truck last winter without a word, it blurred. Made me question shit I buried deep. He laughed, bitter and broken. Hell, maybe I'm the twisted one. Grieving so hard I let my stepson play ghost. The fight drained out of them then, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Bruce collapsed into the chair, Brian sliding to the floor at his feet, head resting against his knee like old times, movie nights with popcorn and Marvel marathons. "What now?" Brian murmured, voice small. Bruce's hand found his hair, fingers threading gently, hesitantly. "We talk. Really talk. No more lies. And therapy for both of us." That grief counselor at the center, the one with the rainbow pin, she sounds right. They stayed like that until dawn. The storm breaking overhead, washing the streets clean. Bruce didn't leave for work. Called in sick. Made pancakes downstairs with too much batter and not enough flip. Brian changed out of the gown, folding it away for good. But the air between them hummed, charged, uncertain, alive with possibility. The days that followed were a tightrope walk. AA meetings became joint ventures, Bruce gripping Brian's hand during shares, whispering proud of you after. They cleared out Elena's closet together, boxes labeled donate and keep, tears mixing with laughter over her collection of tacky tourist mugs. Nights, they talked on the couch, real talks, about Bruce's ex-wife who cheated with his best friend, about Brian's college hookups that fizzled fast because no one stuck like family. But the undercurrent pulled strong. A brush of hands over dish soap bubbles lingered too long. Eyes meeting across the dinner table held secrets. Brian caught Bruce watching him in the backyard, shirtless after a jog, sweat gleaming on his skin like dew. "Looking good, kid," Bruce said, voice gruff, but his gaze was hungry, conflicted. One evening, after a brutal therapy session where the counselor unpacked the pretense like a crime scene, Bruce cracked open a root beer, sober 6 weeks strong, and handed one to Brian on the porch swing. Fireflies danced in the yard, the neighborhood alive with kids on bikes and distant barbecues. "She said we're codependent," Bruce said, popping the tab. That the lie was a symptom, not the disease. Brian sipped, the fizz sharp on his tongue. "Yeah. But symptoms can evolve." He risked it, turning to meet those blue eyes. "Into something healthy. If we want." Bruce set his can down, deliberate, and cupped Brian's face. Echo of that night in the kitchen, but sober, seeing. "I want you safe. Happy. Not tangled in my mess." "You're not a mess," Brian said fiercely. "You're home." The kiss, when it came, was inevitable, slow, tentative, Bruce's lips tasting of root beer and relief. Brian melted into it, hands fisting in Bruce's shirt, the swing creaking under their shift. It wasn't Elena's ghost. It was them, rough edges and all, building something new from the ruins. They pulled back, breathless, foreheads pressed. "Slow," Bruce murmured. "We do this right. Dates. Boundaries. No more shadows." Brian nodded, heart soaring. "Dates sound good. Like that diner on Halsted? Greasy spoons and all." Laughter bubbled up, easing the knot. For the first time in months, the house felt full, not haunted, but hopeful. But hope is fragile, and Chicago summers breed storms. 2 weeks later, at a neighborhood potluck, Elena's old friends circling with casseroles and condolences. Disaster brewed. Mrs. Ramirez, the busybody with the perm and the prayer chain, cornered Bruce by the grill. "Heard you two getting close. Real sweet, but Elena wouldn't want. Complications." Bruce stiffened, spatula pausing mid-flip. "Complications." She leaned in, voice oily. "Saw Brian in her gown once, hanging laundry. Looked. Off. Folks talk. You know." The words slithered like smoke, and Bruce's face went stone. He excused himself, found Brian by the dessert table, laughing with the kids. "We gotta go," he said low, grip iron on Brian's arm. In the truck, rain lashing the windshield, the truth spilled. She knows. Or suspects. And if she does, the whole block will by morning. Panic clawed Brian's throat. What do we do? Deny it? Fight? Bruce's jaw ticked. We face it. Together. But first, he pulled over under a viaduct, thunder cracking overhead, and kissed Brian fierce, claiming, "You're mine now." No hiding. They drove home in silence, the radio humming old Springsteen Thunder Road, ironic and apt. Inside, they made love for the first time. Not in the dark, not as pretense, but in the afternoon light filtering through blinds, bodies learning each other with wonder and worship. Bruce's hands mapped Brian's scars from childhood falls. Brian's lips traced the tattoos Bruce got in the Marines. Eagle on his pec, anchor on his bicep. It was messy, emotional, perfect, tears mixing with sweat. "I love you," S gasped between breaths. After, tangled in sheets, Bruce traced Brian's spine. "This is us." "Real." Brian smiled, sated and scared. "Yeah. But the world's not ready." The world wasn't. By Monday, whispers turned to stares at the garage. Bruce's boss pulling him aside with a family discount on discretion. Brian's coffee shop shift ended early, a coworker muttering perv under breath. Online, Elena's old Facebook group lit up, in loving memory, now a witch hunt. Betrayal came from within. Tommy, Bruce's best friend from the Force days, showed up on the porch with a six-pack and a sermon. "Heard the rumors. Man. Stepdad and stepson? That's sick." Elena's rolling in her grave. Bruce blocked the door. Voice steel. "My house. My life. Get out." Tommy sneered, eyes on Brian hovering in the hall. "Brainwashed the kid. Huh? Watch your back. People talk to CPS. Even for adults." The threat lingered, a shadow over their fragile peace. Brian woke nights in cold sweats, dreaming of eviction notices, of Bruce's job lost, of the life they'd rebuilt crumbling. "We could leave," he suggested one dawn, coffee steaming between them. "Boston. Start over." Bruce shook his head. "Running's not us. We fight, for her memory, for this." The climax hit like a freight train. The block party on the 4th, fireworks popping early from bored teens. Elena's friends rallied, a petition circulating, "Protect our neighborhood values." Mrs. Ramirez led the charge, Bible in hand, confronting them on the lawn as neighbors gawked. "You shame her," she spat at Brian. Parading in her clothes, seducing him, Brian stepped forward, chin high. "I loved my mom. And I love him. That's no shame." Gasps rippled, phones out recording. Bruce wrapped an arm around Brian's waist, defiant. "We're family. Deal with it or don't. But this is our home." The crowd murmured, fracturing, some nodding, others turning away. A young couple, new to the block with rainbow lawn flags, clapped slow, then louder. "Love is love," the woman called, and others echoed. But Ramirez wasn't done. "I'll call the papers. Expose you." "Do it," Bruce growled. "Let the world see we're human." The fallout was swift, a media circus that turned their quiet street into a spectacle. By morning, the Chicago Tribune had a blurb, "Grieving families taboo romance rock suburb," and local TV vans parked curbside, reporters with perfect hair knocking on the door like Jehovah's Witnesses. Brian peeked through the blinds, nausea churning. "This is bad, Bruce. Real bad." Bruce, nursing black coffee at the table, set his mug down with a thud. "Bad's relative. Remember when Elena's tamale cart got shut down by health inspectors? We rallied the block. Sold out in an hour." He stood, pulling Brian into a bear hug that smelled of resolve and yesterday's cologne. "We'll rally again." But rallying meant exposure, and exposure meant vulnerability. Brian's phone buzzed nonstop. College friends from Boston texting WTF dude, and worse, his estranged bio-dad's number flashing after years of silence. Saw the news. Disgrace. He deleted it, blocking the flood, but the damage seeped in, eroding the joy they'd clawed back. Therapy intensified, sessions stretching to couples hours where the counselor, Dr. Reyes, a no-nonsense Latina with Elena's fire in her eyes, dissected the layers. "The pretense was a bridge," she said, her office a sanctuary of plants and pride posters. "But bridges burn if not tended. What do you want this to be?" Bruce shifted in the leather chair, hand squeezing Brian's. "Permanent. Legal, if we can. But real dates, fights, the whole messy deal." Brian nodded, throat tight. "Yeah. Him. Us. Dr. Reyes smiled faint. "Then own it. The world's catching up, but suburbs lag. Prepare for pushback." Pushback came in waves. Hate mail stuffed in the mailbox. Sinners scrawled in red marker. Tires slashed on Bruce's truck. Graffiti on the garage door, "Fags out." Brian scrubbed it off one afternoon, chemical fumes burning his eyes, while Bruce worked double shifts to cover the repairs. "Don't go out alone," Bruce warned, kissing his temple before leaving. "Not till it cools." Isolation crept in, a thief in the night. Brian quit the coffee shop after a customer spat homewrecker at his feet. Bruce's garage buddies thinned, whispers following him to the bays. Nights, they clung tighter, lovemaking a refuge, slow explorations by candlelight, Bruce's whispers of beautiful boy chasing shadows away. But dawn brought reality. Elena's grave unvisited, friends ghosting, the house a bunker. The betrayal deepened when Tommy resurfaced, not with fists but finesse. He cornered Brian at the corner store, milk carton in hand like a prop for normalcy. "Heard you're playing house." But Bruce, he's straight as an arrow. "You'll break him, kid. Walk away clean." Brian gripped the cart, knuckles paling. "You don't know us." "Not anymore." Tommy's laugh was oil slick. "I know Elena. She'd puke seeing this freak show." He leaned in, breath sour. "I'm telling the garage owner. Full story. Unless you end it." The threat coiled like smoke, and Brian raced home, slamming the door as tears came hot and furious. Bruce found him curled on the couch, sobbing into a throw pillow. "Talk to me," he urged, kneeling, hands gentle on Brian's knees. "Tommy. He knows. Threatens to out us at work unless I leave." The words choked out, ugly and small. Bruce's face darkened, thunder brewing. That son of a bitch. After everything, standing at the funeral, toasting her like a brother, he pulled Brian up, into his lap, rocking like a child. "You don't leave. We don't bend. I'll quit first." But quitting wasn't simple. Bills piled, the house payment looming like a guillotine. Brian took freelance gigs, online tutoring Psych 101 to stressed freshmen, while Bruce networked, cold-calling shops across the city. "We'll make it," he'd say, kissing Brian's worries away, but doubt flickered in his eyes, the blue dimming. Climax brewed at Elena's grave. All Souls' Day, the cemetery a quilt of fallen leaves and flickering candles. They went at dusk, Brian carrying her favorite marigolds, Bruce a thermos of hot chocolate, her graveside ritual. The air was crisp, biting, carrying whispers of wood smoke from distant bonfires. Kneeling in the damp grass, Brian arranged the flowers, petals bright against the stone. Elena Vasquez Miller, beloved wife, mother, firecracker. 1975 to 2025. "Miss you, Mom," he whispered. "Sorry if we're messing this up." Bruce's hand on his shoulder steadied. Warm. She'd want us happy. Kicking ass. But as they rose, Tommy emerged from the shadows, deliberate, like a bad Western showdown, flanked by two burly guys from the old precinct, faces hard as badges. "Poetic," Tommy sneered, nodding at the grave. "Coming here to beg forgiveness?" Bruce stepped forward, body a wall. "Private property, Tommy." "Piss off." Tommy's grin was wolfish. "Not till he hears it." "Brian, tell your lover how you schemed it." Slipped into her clothes, played seductress. "I saw you that night, through the window." Looked like a cheap hooker. The words detonated, Brian's blood icing over. "You spied? You sick fuck." "Truth hurts." Tommy cut in, advancing. "And the garage? They'll know by morning. Unless you admit it was a phase." A joke gone wrong. Bruce lunged, fist connecting with Tommy's jaw in a crack that echoed like gunfire. The goons piled on, a melee of grunts and flying dirt, Bruce taking punches to the ribs, Brian kicking at shins, marigolds trampled underfoot. Sirens wailed distant, drawn by a jogger's 911, and the fight broke as blue lights flashed. Cops separated them, statements taken under the cemetery's looming oaks. Tommy pressed charges. Assault, the works, his lips split, eye swelling purple. Bruce, zip-tied in the back of a cruiser, met Brian's gaze through the window. "I love you." "Don't worry," but worry gnawed deep. Bail was set high. Brian pawned his laptop, called in favors from DR. Reyes, who fronted the rest. Released at dawn. Bruce limped home, ribs taped, lip fat. "Worth it," he grunted, collapsing on the couch. Brian fussed. "Ice packs, painkillers, tea steeped strong." "Not if it costs you everything." Bruce pulled him down, wincing. "Everything? Nah. You're everything." They kissed, salt of tears mingling, bodies aligning careful around bruises. The shockwave hit the community like a bomb. Tommy's version leaked. Widower fights lover at wife's grave. But witnesses contradicted. The jogger, a trans kid from the next block, testified to Tommy's aggression. Social media flipped. Justice for Brian trended locally. Allies emerging from the woodwork. Elena's old book club posting love wins. The young couple hosting a block party fundraiser. Bruce got suspended from the garage, but offers trickled in indie shops with pride stickers in windows, mechanics who'd marched in 19. Brian landed a part-time gig at a queer youth center, facilitating groups on coming out, his story anonymized but empowering. Yet the emotional toll mounted. Nights, Bruce woke screaming, Elena's crash replaying, now twisted with fists and graveside dirt. Brian held him, whispering anchors, but his own dreams fractured. the gown choking him, Tommy's face morphing into his bio-dad's sneer. "We need space," Brian said one gray November morning, leaves skittering like warnings outside. "To heal. Separate rooms. At least." Bruce's face fell, but he nodded. "If that's what you need. But not separate lives." The distance was a mercy and a torture. Polite breakfasts, lingering goodnights that begged for more. Brian poured into work, connecting with kids like his younger self, scared, sparkling, stepping into light. Bruce rebuilt, starting a mobile repair service. Miller Fixes, van wrapped in rainbows at Brian's insistence. Romantic gestures bloomed tentative. Bruce leaving notes in Brian's lunch, thinking of your smile. Brian cooking candlelit dinners. No pretenses, just them. The pull strengthened, emotions deepening into something unbreakable, humanistic in its flaws. Winter solstice brought the turning. A quiet night, snow blanketing the yard like forgiveness. They sat by the fire, Bruce strumming Elena's old guitar, Brian humming along to Hallelujah. The song wove through them, Leonard Cohen's ache mirroring their own. "I betrayed her," Bruce said sudden, fingers stilling on strings. "By needing you this way." Brian shifted closer, hand on his thigh. "No. You honored her by living. Loving again." He kissed Bruce's temple, soft. "We're human, remember? Messy, but good." Bruce turned, eyes shining. "Marry me? Not legal yet. Maybe, but vows. Here, with the people who matter." Tears pricked. "Yes. God, yes." The proposal hung in the air like the first snowflake, delicate, promising a flurry. Brian stared at Bruce, the fire crackling between them, casting golden flickers on the man's face. Lines of worry softened, blue eyes steady with a hope Brian hadn't seen since pre-accident barbecues. "Vows," Brian echoed, voice thick. "Like our own ceremony." Bruce set the guitar aside, leaning forward on the rug, knees brushing Brian's. "Yeah. Nothing fancy, no white tuxes or cake fights. Just us, Dr. Reyes to officiate, whoever shows. Under the big oak in the backyard. Like Elena always wanted for her renewal with me." He pulled a small box from his pocket, velvet, worn, containing 2 silver bands etched with coordinates. Elena's grave latitude, a nod to roots. Simple. Real. Brian's chest ached, joy and grief tangling like vines. He slipped the ring on, cool metal warming to his skin. Perfect. They kissed then, slow and sealing, the fire's heat paling against the spark reigniting between them. Planning became their rebellion, a fuck you to the gossips and ghosts. Invites went out via group text, join our unwedding. Love over labels. Potluck. 4 p.m. Solstice Eve. RSVPs trickled. The young couple, bring pie. Dr. Reyes, I'll bring the wisdom. A handful from the youth center, rainbow cupcakes. Tommy's crowd stayed silent, but a few fence-sitters flipped, Mrs. Ramirez's niece, a lesbian barista who'd heard the whispers, showed with tamales. The ceremony was magic in the mundane. Snow dusting the oak like confetti, string lights Bruce rigged twinkling against dusk. Brian wore a button-down soft blue, jeans scuffed from life, Bruce in flannel and cords, looking every bit the rugged everyman who'd stolen his heart twice over. Dr. Reyes stood under the branches, stole borrowed from her wife's closet fluttering in the breeze. Do you, Brian Vasquez, take this man, flaws, flatulence, and all to build a life of honesty. No matter the storm, laughter rippled, Brian's I do steady as the earth. And you, Bruce Miller, vow to see him, not as shadow or savior, but as partner, equal in every dawn. Bruce's voice gravel rough. I do. With everything I've got. They exchanged rings, kisses sealing under cheers. Small but fierce, a chorus of chosen family. Potluck followed on the porch. Tamales steaming, pies sliced generous, stories swapped like gifts. The niece pulled Brian aside. Auntie's coming around. Saw the news. Said, "'Bout time someone shook this street." As night deepened, guests drifted, leaving the house warm with echoes. Upstairs, they made love unhurried, exploring with the leisure of vows kept, bodies a map of shared survival. Bruce's hands, calloused and sure, traced Brian's hips. Mine, Brian's lips on Bruce's neck. Ours. But romance doesn't vaccinate against reality. January brought court for the cemetery brawl. Tommy pushing assault charges, painting Bruce the aggressor. The precinct boys testified loyal, but the jogger's video, shaky cell footage, showed Tommy's shove first. Brian sat front row, hand in Bruce's under the bench. As the judge, a silver-haired woman with a pride pin discreet on her robe, dismissed with prejudice. Self-defense. Case closed. Outside, Tommy waited. Sneer faded to sullen. You win this round, Miller. But Elena, leave her out, Bruce snapped, arm around Brian. She's at peace. We will be too. Tommy slunk off, tail between legs. And later, word came he'd transferred to Milwaukee. Job loss, divorce acceleration. Karma, Brian called it. Grace, Bruce amended. Spring thawed the ice, literally and not. Bruce's mobile service boomed, word of mouth from the youth center, queer-owned businesses calling for tune-ups. Miller fixes. We get you moving, the van proclaimed. And it did, Brian tagging along on weekends, handing tools, stealing kisses in engine bays. They adopted a mutt from the shelter, Rusty, a red-nosed pit with Elena's stubborn spark, turning runs in the park into leashed adventures. Emotions deepened, romantic gestures woven into routine. Bruce surprising Brian with tickets to a Cubs game, hot dogs and heckles under Wrigley lights. Brian curating mixtapes on vinyl, Springsteen for drive-bys, Cohen for slow dances in the kitchen. Humanistic threads emerged in quiet. Volunteering at the center, Bruce sharing shop stories with at-risk kids. Tools don't judge, people do. Fix what's bent, not break it. Yet conflict simmered beneath. Betrayals echo in trust's fragile rebuild. One May evening, post-shift, Brian found an envelope in the mail. No stamp, local postmark. Inside photos, grainy but damning, him in the gown. First night, Bruce's hand on his waist. Back, truth hurts. End it or everyone sees. Heart hammering, Brian confronted Bruce over dinner. Tacos, ironically Elena's recipe. Tommy? Or someone new? Bruce's face paled, fork dropping. Doesn't matter. We burn him. But doubt crept. Brian's sleep fracturing with what-ifs. What if the center fired him? What if Bruce wavered under pressure? The climax crested at Pride. Chicago's streets a riot of color. Floats thumping bass. Drag queens on stilts. The air electric with glitter and chants. They marched. Hands linked. Brian's youth group banner high. Love unscripted. Cheers swelled. But midway, a counterprotester shoved through. hoodie-clad, sign reading "God hates fags," flinging the photos at their feet like confetti from hell. The crowd gasped, then roared. Security swarmed, but damage bloomed viral, snaps shared, hashtags exploding, stepfamily scandal. Reporters swarmed post-march, mics thrusting. Is it true? The pretense. Bruce pulled Brian close, voice amplified by sheer will. True enough. I grieved. He helped. We fell in love. That's the story, human, messy, ours. The quote went national. CNN picking it up. From grief to gay, a Chicago love story. Shock rippled. Hate calls to the center. But more, calls from producers, therapists, everyday folks emailing thank you for the courage. Betrayal source? A garage holdout, outed by his own guilty post on a forum. He apologized in a letter, regret. Jealousy. Won't happen again. And they let it go. Forgiveness a choice. Summer deepened their bond. Romance blooming wild. Weekend in the dunes. Sand between toes. Waves crashing as they renewed vows impromptu. Salt air witness. Emotions peaked in vulnerability. Bruce admitting fears of aging. Brian confessing imposter syndrome in love. You're my anchor, Brian said, echoing old whispers. Now truth. Humanism shown in community rebuild. Block party invite all. Elena's tamales centerpiece. Toasts to resilience. Mrs. Ramirez attended, stiff but present, offering a quiet blessings to Brian. Small olive branch. Accepted. As leaves turned again, they planned permanence. Civil union filing. Adoption papers for Rusty formalized. Life wasn't fairy tale. No dragon slain forever. But a tapestry. Threads of loss and love woven tight. Autumn's palette painted the Victorian gold and crimson, mirroring the warmth seeping back into their lives. Brian woke to the scent of pumpkin spice, Bruce's half-assed attempt at lattes, foam art a lopsided heart, and laughed, pulling him back to bed for a lazy tumble. You're getting domestic, Brian teased, nuzzling Bruce's stubbled jaw. Bruce grinned, pinning him gently. Blame Netflix. That Queer Eye marathons got me hooked. Their lovemaking was morning soft. Sunlight slanting through curtains. Bodies synced in a rhythm honed by months of trial and tenderness. Afterward, tangled and sated, they planned the day, Harvest Fest downtown, hayrides and cider for the youth group. The center had become Brian's heartbeat, facilitating circles where kids spilled stories of unsupportive folks, first crushes, the ache of invisibility. You're like the big brother we need, one teen said, a shy non-binary artist with Elena's spark in their sketches. Brian beamed, but inside, gratitude swelled, for the path that led here, through pretense to purpose. Bruce thrived too, Van a rolling confessional, tuning engines while dispensing wisdom. Life's like a carburetor, clogged with crap, sputters. Clean it out. Run smooth. Clients multiplied. A loyal crew forming. The Lesbian Mechanics Co-op. Trans-owned food trucks. Even Tommy reached out. A halting email from Milwaukee. Therapy's kicking my ass. Sorry. Be happy. They archived it. No reply needed. Forgiveness internal. Not performative. Romance infused the everyday. Surprise picnics by Lake Michigan. Bruce's truck bed lined with blankets. Stars wheeling overhead as they shared dreams. Brian finishing his degree online. Maybe counseling full-time. Bruce eyeing a shop of his own. Miller and Vasquez repairs. Pride flag flying. Emotions ran deep. Conversations stretching late. Bruce unpacking Marine days. The buddy lost to Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Brian voicing Biodad ghosts. The abandonment echoing in trust wobbles. Conflict lingered subtle. A flare-up when Bruce's ex called. Fishing for reconciliation post-divorce final. Miss the old days. Brucey. Jealousy spiked Brian's chest. Irrational but real. She wants you back, he accused over cooling stir-fry. Voice sharp. Bruce set his chopsticks down. Calm as a mill pond. Old days are done. You're my now and tomorrow. He stood, rounding the table to kneel, hands open. Trust that, or we unpack it. But don't doubt us. Brian exhaled, walls crumbling. Sorry. Ghosts. They made up on the couch. The notebook flickering ignored. Tears and touches dissolving the rift. Humanistic in its honesty. Love not blind, but seeing, choosing daily. Winter holidays approached. First without Elena, a milestone laced bittersweet. They decorated lean, tinsel on the mantle. Her ornaments dusted gentle, and hosted a solstice gathering. Non-denominational glow. Menorah candles beside a menorah-shaped kinara. Lights for Diwali echoes. The youth group came, plus allies. Rusty decked in a bow tie, tail wagging chaos. Gifts exchanged heartfelt. Brian a leather-bound journal for Bruce's poetry scribbles. Rough verses on loss, love, lake winds. Bruce a custom chain necklace for Brian. Pendant a tiny wrench and heart intertwined. Tools for the heart, he murmured, clasping it. New Year's dawned crisp. Resolutions whispered at midnight kiss. More adventures. Deeper truths. Each other. They rang it in with mimosas and breakfast at Tiffany's. Holly Golightly's whimsy a nod to Elena's rom-com obsessions. Spring brought legal wins. Illinois greenlit their union. Courthouse simple DR. Reyes and Rusty witnesses. Rings exchanged anew. Husband. Bruce tested post-ceremony. Over deep dish at Giordano's. Cheese stretching like their joy. Husband. Brian echoed, grinning around a bite. Media had cooled. Story archived as feel-good footnote. But impact rippled. A docuseries pitch. Youth center funding spike. Elena's book club donating in her name. Yet the humanistic core pulsed in quiet victories. Visiting her grave monthly. Flowers fresh. Stories shared, Mom. We made it weird but wonderful. No ghosts. Just guides. Summer solstice circled back. 1 year post-proposal. Backyard oak festooned again. But grander. Community potluck. 50 souls under branches. Neighbors reconciled. Center kids performing spoken word on identity. Brian and Bruce renewed. Words evolved. Through betrayals and breakthroughs. I choose you. Climax of their year? Not drama, but depth, a road trip to Boston. Brian's old stomping grounds. Fenway echoes. Harvard yard walks. Nights in a Harborview Airbnb where they dance to oldies. Bodies close. This is us, Bruce said, swaying to At Last. Etta James' crooning soul. No pretending. Just present. Brian nodded, tears pricking. Forever. Fall returned. Leaves a carpet of memory. Brian graduated virtual. Cap tossed in the living room. Bruce whooping louder than any crowd. Job offer followed. Center director. Salary to match dreams. Betrayal scar faded to story. A chapter closed. Lessons etched. They mentored a young couple from the group, navigating their own taboo ties, offering truth first, love second. Always, As November snow dusted again, they sat porch-bound, rusty at feet, mugs steaming. Shocked everyone. "Ha!" Brian quipped, nodding to the street once hostile, now dotted with pride signs. Bruce chuckled, arm heavy around shoulders. "Damn right. Best shock of my life." The ending wasn't tidy, no sweeping montage, just this two men, forged in fire, choosing dawn after every dark. Human, flawed, loved. In the heart of America, where winters bite but springs bloom relentless, they built a legacy, not of pretense, but presence. Elena's laugh echoed faint in the wind, proving eternal. And in the quiet nights, when rain drummed windows once more, Brian whispered into Bruce's neck, "Not as wife, but as equal, I'm here. Always."